Dear honored guests and colleagues, welcome to the book launch seminar of the Routledge Handbook of Chinese and Eurasian International Relations, a publication by Taylor and Francis on July 26, 2024. The Routledge Handbook of Chinese and Eurasian International Relations explores China's relations with Eurasian continents, regions, and countries in a multipolar era, providing an equal and balanced platform for scholars and practitioners from East, West, North, and South. This diversity enriches the contribution, giving it a dynamic ability to examine sources in different languages and covers a vast geography. Part one of the handbook is entitled Powers Play in Eurasia in a Multipolar World Order 2.0. It argues that we are in a multipolar world order 2.0 stage where the interests of great powers collide in Europe and Asia, and the Russo-Ukrainian war stood as the #1 security issue in the Eurasian continent. It explains that because of the war, China is having obstacles to implementing its Belt and Road Initiative. For this reason, it tries to find the political solutions. Part 2 examines China's interest and politics in Central Asia, cooperation and contradiction with Russia, India, and other powers. It argues that although Russia still has a significant influence in this resource-rich region, India and our powers are also strengthening their position, but time is working for China. In part 3, the authors analyze China's relations with Middle Eastern countries. The main argument is that in a multipolar world order 2.0, China's consistent implementation of Belt and Road Initiative in the Middle East brings economic and political benefits. Part 4 examines China's relation with several Western, Central, and Eastern European states. It argues that in a multipolar world order 2.0, European states cannot avoid choosing between the West and the East. In this respect, membership in NATO or the EU will play a crucial role. Part 5 examines China's politics within the Asia-Pacific region. It also analyzes Beijing's cooperation and contradictions with other great powers in the region for geopolitical influence, maritime routes, natural resources, and other issues. The main argument of this part is that China and the United States compete in this region for every country, and the decoupling of the two superpowers is not due to the national interest of regional states and entities. Part 6 explains how the collaboration between China and Russia affects the competition between major powers in the Arctic, in a region with extensive untapped resources. It argues that China and Russia need each other to work in the Arctic. Part 7 of the handbook delves into China's relations with the Eurasian Economic Union and NATO. It argues that the conjunction of China's Belt and Road Initiative with the Eurasian Economic Union contributes to China's shift towards post-Soviet Eurasia. On the contrary, China and NATO conflict with each other. China perceives NATO's expansion towards the East as a challenge, while NATO has declared China as a challenge to its security, interests, and values. Part 8 of Routledge Handbook of Chinese and International Relations is entitled Digitalization and International Relations. The main argument is that the great powers struggle for Eurasian cyberspace, and China has enough capabilities to compete, win in several Eurasian regions. Part 9 of the handbook deals with environmental issues and their impact on Eurasian international relations. It recommends that China should implement measures to improve environmental monitoring for projects related to resources, extraction, and infrastructure in investment under the Belt and Road Initiative. Part 10 provides including remarks on the current Eurasian multipolar world order 2.0 and the role of China and other centers. It also implements case studies on multipolarity 2.0 in Eurasian international relations, in the high technology sphere, financial sphere, and weapons distribution. The Routledge Handbook of Chinese and Eurasian international relations also contains official documents detailing the establishment of diplomatic relations between China and several European and Asian states, making it an authoritative source on diplomatic affairs. The work is the culmination of collective efforts of distinguished and emerging scholars from over 20 countries. As the editor of this handbook, I extend my deeper gratitude to my colleagues for their dedication and hard work. Together, we have demonstrated that multilateral teamwork is possible and essential, even in the complex geopolitical landscape of the multipolar world order 2.0. I want to express my gratitude to Mr. Rob Sorsby, senior editor at Routledge, for his support and advice in creating the Routledge Handbook of Chinese and Eurasian International Relations. Special thanks also go to Professor Kevin Law, Professor Emilian Kowalski, Professor Linda Chelan-Lee, Dr. David Morris, and the entire Routledge team, including the numerous anonymous reviewers for their invaluable suggestions, unwavering support, and constructive criticism throughout the process. I'm excited to share with you the remarkable success of our book. In just 20 days, it has garnered significant attention, underscoring its relevance and impact in the field. Notably, it has already been indexed by Scopus, a prestigious global platform that covers academic books across a wide range of disciplines, reflecting our work's scholarly, professional, and educational value. According to WorldCat, the world's largest library catalog, our handbook is now available in over 60 libraries worldwide, including those at some of the most renowned institutions, such as Johns Hopkins University, Imperial College of London, MIT, Hong Kong Baptist University, National University of Singapore, University of Groningen, McGill University, Princeton University, and many others. This widespread availability highlights the academic significance of our contribution. The production has also received attention from media outlets such as Armen Press, China Daily. It has been covered by academic institutions, including the AsiaGlobal Institute, School of Economics, International Political Science Association, Beijing Normal University, Hong Kong Baptist United International College, the Center of Contemporary China and the World, and the China-Eurasia Council for Political and Strategic Research. Their interest in the Routledge Handbook of Chinese and Eurasian International Relations speaks volumes about its importance in contemporary scholarship. Furthermore, I am pleased to announce that Routledge Handbook of Chinese and Eurasian International Relations is now available for review in essential journals such as Journal of Asian Energy Studies, Iran and the Caucasus, and the Review of International Affairs. I want to extend my deepest gratitude to the editors of these journals, Professor Kevin Law, Professor Victoria Arakelova, and Dr. Nenad Stekic, for their ongoing support. And now let's begin our discussion. After each speaker delivers their remarks, I will invite the next one to the floor. We will conclude with a question and a session where you can engage further with our distinguished speakers and their research. I am honored to give the floor to our keynote speaker, Professor Dr. Kevin Law. He is the chair of the Department of Geography at Hong Kong Baptist University and director of David Salam Institute for East-West Studies. He has been recognized by Stanford University as one of the world's top 2% of most cited scientists and is the founding editor of the Journal of Asian Energy Studies. By the way, on November 1, 2023, China-Eurasia Council for Political and Strategic Research and David Salam Institute for East-West Studies concluded Memorandum of Understanding, solidifying their commitment to mutual cooperation. As a result, Dr. Lo contributed chapter and preface for Routledge Handbook of Chinese and Eurasian International Relations. I visited Hong Kong as a Louis Fellow. We organized 2 seminars and started our work on the Routledge Handbook of China's Belt and Road Initiative in Eurasia, and an article for the Chinese geographical journals. Dear Dr. Lo, thank you for your hospitality in Hong Kong. Hope we will have you in Yerevan as well. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mher, for the kind introductions. Can I share my screen now?
Sure, yeah, I will.
Okay, so hello friends and colleagues. Very excited and honored to be here talking with you. So my name is Kevin Lo from Hong Kong Baptist University. Mher already kindly introduced me, so I don't need to repeat my background. But before I start, I would like to congratulate Mher and the China-Eurasian Council for Political Strategic Research for this huge success of launching this new book. And the book providing very, very rich and up-to-date information about China and Eurasian relations. So my book chapter and my talk today is about the environmental aspect of the Belt and Road Initiative. In other words, greening the Belt and Road Initiative. So first of all, why should we care about making the BRI more environmentally friendly? So we all know that the BRI is the world's largest infrastructure development project. It's extremely ambitious, operating in over 150 countries in Asia, Europe, America, and Africa. Through the BRI, China wants to promote economic development and regional connectivity, as well as achieving some geopolitical and geoeconomic agendas. However, there are legitimate concerns about the environmental impact that this very often massive project and investment will bring. So in the literature, there's quite a lot of papers citing concerns about climate change, impact on natural ecosystem, landscapes, also air and water pollution, etc. So in response to these criticisms, the Chinese government began to talk about greening the Belt and Road Initiative at the second Belt and Road Forum in 2019, which symbolized a growing awareness and commitment to environmental concerns. However, greening the BRI is very complicated and complex as it involves transnational governance issues. I myself studied environmental governance in China, and it's already very complicated. So you can imagine having very little control over other countries does add to the complexities. Furthermore, while environmental policies associated with BRI are being made and implemented, how these can be translated into practice is very unclear due to a lack of research. So I'm going to talk very briefly about 4 recent studies, 3 of them published and 1's under review. And my book chapter sort of draw on these studies. And these studies try to unpack the intricate dynamics of the Green BRI. So in this first study, which was published last year in Research and Globalization, this is a policy analysis. Because my background in conducting research in Chinese environmental governance for many years, it is natural for me to ask the question whether the Green Belt and Road Initiative means promoting the Chinese-style environmental governance, which I called authoritarian environmentalism, because it's very top-down and feature command and control. So to answer these questions, I conducted a narrative analysis of 1,600 policy documents, and the finding is very clear, actually. The visions from the Chinese government's perspective, the visions for the BRI is to promote international free market environmentalism. So in other words, it's very different from his domestic mode of governance. The document I analyzed talk about market-based solutions, corporate responsibility, industrial standards, economic growth, the use of technologies, all these terminologies that we are usually associated with not just free market environmentalism, but also ecological modernization. So I would say a few words about whether this mode is working or not later. But let's move on quickly to the next study. If the grand sort of strategic objectives for the Green BRI is to achieve free market environmentalism, then the next question is, how are we going to achieve it? And then we're going to talk about different roles of different key actors. Number one, what is the role of the Chinese government in greening the BRI? And this is the focus of this study, which was published in Environmental Politics last year. So theoretically, we argue that the Chinese government used this concept called orchestration, which is a soft and indirect model of transnational governance to achieve its environmental objectives. And empirically, we identified the BRIGC, which stands for BRI International Green Development Coalition, as the key central level actor. This organization was created in 2019 by the Ministry of Ecology and Environment, and as well as a number of international partners to play this orchestration role. The BRI is currently, well, originally, it aimed to be active in 10 areas, but only 4 are actually active at the moment. Those are green consumerism, green infrastructure, green finance, and green governance. The BRIGC recruit and support intermediaries, such as Chinese international companies and NGOs, to influence the target, which are the BRI countries. However, we found that the main problems or the main challenge is insufficient support from the government, the Chinese government, I mean, in terms of financial and human power. We are also interested in the roles of NGOs because they are a very important class of intermediaries in transnational environmental governance. In Cambodia, we conducted a case studies of Chinese and Japanese NGOs. And very quickly, we realized that Cambodia is an interesting case because it is a geopolitical battleground between Japan and China, and both countries trying to become the most influential partner of Cambodia. Japan recently celebrated 70 years of diplomatic relations with Cambodia, and China also has a very strong relationship with Cambodia. So we argue that in this context, geopolitical strategies and transnational environmental governance become entangled, and NGOs are at the heart of this entanglement. We propose there's 2 types of entanglement. One we call tight coupling, where the NGOs are closely aligned with the home state geopolitical strategies, and Japan is a good example. The Japanese government actively support their environmental NGOs, for example, providing fundings and networking support, allowing their NGOs to develop long-term relationships with local communities. And we argue this is because this is a part of Japanese geopolitical strategies that focus very much on developing soft power. The second model is loose coupling, where the NGOs and home state geopolitics is not well aligned, and exemplified by the Chinese case. The Chinese NGOs are at the margin of the BRI and does not receive support from the Chinese government. And this is mainly because Chinese geopolitical strategies, the BRI is primarily focused on infrastructure development rather than soft power. And this study has been published in the journal Geoflorum. The last study I want to talk about focuses on the roles of businesses in greening the BRI. Again, we conducted a case studies in Cambodia to study the actions of Chinese firms in the countries. And we found a very interesting case, a company that's trying to sell pollution control equipment to the garment industry in Cambodia. And we thought this is very important because the garment industry in Cambodia is not just the most important industry, but also the most polluting industry. The most interesting finding we had is that the companies is not just a typical international entrepreneur, but they also try to act as a policy entrepreneur. I'm not sure if you're familiar with this concept of policy entrepreneurship. It basically refers to people or organization that tries to change policies or introduce new policies. So this particular firm that we study try hard to improve Cambodian's government's environmental monitoring capacity. For example, by donating high-tech surveillance equipment to the government, and also by building partnerships and networks between the garment industry and the government. And we argue that the company can achieve market penetrations by improving this environmental governance in Cambodia. So the logic of entrepreneurship is very much aligned or entangled with the logic of policy entrepreneurship. Also, the insight is that globalization has complicated the relationship between economic activities and environmental governance under the BRI. So my talk is coming to an end, and I want to just very briefly offer two critical reflections. Number one is that the BRI countries are mostly developing countries. They very often have weak environmental law and enforcement capacities. And as such, it's very questionable if the visions of international free market environmentalisms can adequately protect the local governments and the interests of local communities. The second reflection is that even China has these visions of free market environmentalism, it is unclear whether it can achieve it, because China has yet to establish the infrastructure to support the actualization of its transnational environmental goal. The BRIGC is a solid first step, but more support is needed to help the Chinese intermediaries, such as the NGOs and businesses, to achieve a green BRI. That's all I want to share with you. Thank you very much for listening.
Dear Professor Lo, thank you very much for your insightful keynote speech. Thank you. And now I am pleased to invite Dr. Magdalena Łągiewska to deliver her speech. Dr. Łągiewska is an assistant professor at the University of Gdańsk, a research associate in China Law and Development Project at the University of Oxford, and an AsiaGlobal Fellow at the University of Hong Kong, Hong Kong's AsiaGlobal Institute. Her recent book, Digitalization and the Use of the New Technologies in International Arbitration, was published by Brill recently. Dr. Łągiewska, we look forward to your thoughts. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much for the introduction, and thank you, Professor Mher Sahakyan, for this great opportunity to have a book launch. And I'm really grateful for your hard work to making this project successful. And it was a great honor and also a great pleasure to contribute to this book. So thank you very much. Today, I would like to share with you a few remarks on legal aspects of the digital Silk Road. It's quite important to remember that when we think about digital Silk Road within the BRI, there is a new concept of digital China, which consists of two megatrends. So first of all, we should think about Chinese economic rise, but also digitalization in the global economy. And the Chinese authorities decided to launch a special project, which is called Made in China 2025. And through this kind of initiative, they would like to become a superpower, even a technopower, in the fourth industrial revolution. So it's quite important for them to make use of different types of services, internet-related services, and to achieve this goal. So actually, if you think about the Chinese involvement in this digital Silk Road, it consists and is based upon an internet program which pays attention to technological development. And actually, we have three components, three main streams within this program. So first of all, China pays attention to semiconductors, so microchips, but also quantum computing and artificial intelligence. And actually, when it comes to the last one, so artificial intelligence, it's already widely applied in case of smart cards, for instance, but it's only one example in China. So digital Silk Road, it has become a new component within the BRI since 2017. Even it has been launched in 2015. But when we think about DSR, actually it has twofold dimensions. So first of all, it pays attention to integration of communication services in different countries across BRI, but also it pays attention to information sharing. So when we think about DSR, it has the aim to control the flow of data. So through this kind of initiative, China seeks to shift the balance to become a geopolitical power and even superpower. And we have quite a lot of different types of internet-based technologies that have been applied and implemented not only in China, but also in BRI-related countries. So for instance, I would like to pay attention and I analyze it in my chapter. So example of Alibaba Cloud, so different types of data centers that have been used across BRI countries such as Singapore, but also United Arab Emirates. Another example refers to operating system, which is called Flying Sky. And this system provides services to millions of servers globally. And for this kind of internet-based technology, China seeks to transform into a supercomputer, providing public online services to the global computational power. And actually, DSR, it's also widely recognized as a Chinese initiative to, through which China seeks to become a leading power in producing physical infrastructure when it comes to digital sphere. And what is the most important here, and it was the core of my chapter, so what are the legal aspects of the digital Silk Road? It's quite surprising that with this regard, China decided to focus mostly on non-binding soft law instruments. So China makes use of Memorandum of Understanding and many other policy documents. So it's not the same solution. Likewise, in the case of WTO, which is recognized as a fundamental infrastructure in terms of global order, here China decided to decided to conclude some supplementary free trade and bilateral investment agreements with BRI countries. But we don't have and we don't see a similar solutions when it comes to digital Silk Road. So it has not been put in a very strict legal framework when we have a hard law instrument. Instead, China decided to sign more than 16 cooperative agreements with DSR host states. But of course, to achieve its goal, China also needs to tackle quite a lot of practical challenges. And one of the most important challenges relates to data security. So when we have a data flow through different countries, so cross-border data flow, this is one trouble. And the second one, it also refers to confidentiality across countries that are simply involved in DSR. And we have also quite a lot of new initiatives that have been undertaken by China within the framework of BRI and DSR. So China decided to launch Belt and Road Digital Economy International Cooperation Initiative. So in this case, it's also a small element within DSR. So here China cooperates with Egypt, Laos, Saudi Arabia, Serbia, Thailand, Turkey, and the United Arab Emirates. And it has been launched in December 2017. And there are actually 15 general principles that pays attention to the process of enhancing policy communication, but also connectivity between these countries, trade, financing, and there is a big involvement of Chinese Ministry of Industry and Information Technology. So for that reason, even they decided to launch a letter of intent with the ITU and to sign some memorandum of understanding with different countries, including Cambodia, Iran, Bangladesh, and Kazakhstan. So as you can see, China tries to find different platforms to make digital Silk Road vivid and to make it flourish. And actually, they pay attention to data centers and also cloud networks, just to have a very smooth flow of data. And what are the legal responses with regard to these challenges? So mostly with data security and data protection of personal information. So China decided to launch a threefold framework to better protect all the data. So to achieve this goal, they adopted personal information protection law, which actually resembles European GDPR, cybersecurity law, and also data security law. And DSR can be summarized as a diplomatic tool with this regard. So actually, through this kind of initiative, China seeks to expand and legitimize cyberspace norms and also standards at the international level. So we have quite a lot of examples about digital Silk Road. So it's not only about smart ports, which I mentioned at the beginning, but also about smart cities. So this concept has been widely implemented in Central Asia. So in such countries as Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan. So actually, many initiatives are already widely used there. But it's not only the case of Central Asia. We have also examples of smart cities based on a Chinese model in the Middle East, mostly in Saudi Arabia and in the United Arab Emirates, but also in Africa. And why is it so much important to talk about the DSR within the framework of multipolar world order 2.0? Because if we think about China and why they decided to launch this kind of a project within BRI, actually this initiative helps to reshape global order and also helps China to become a superpower in the digital world. So there is quite a lot of initiatives and investments in 5G networks, in data centers, in fiber optic cables, and many others. And it's also very much important to enhance Chinese position, not only in Eurasia region, in Central Asia, but also in the Middle East and Central and Eastern Europe. So as we think about these legal aspects of the DSR, mostly China pays attention to this soft law instruments instead of hard law of bilateral agreements and or multilateral agreements, and it perfectly works in this case. So you can see there are some differences between BRI in general and DSR in particular. So thank you very much for your attention.
Dear Magdalena, thank you very much. Thank you very much for this very interesting speech. Thank you. Next, I am happy to invite Dr. Greg Simmons, to share his research. Dr. Simmons is a lecturer at Turiba University and prolific author on topics such as political dynamics and crisis communication. His co-edited volumes include The Changing Face of Warfare in 21st Century and Religion, Politics and Nation Building in Post-Communist Countries, published by Routledge. Dr. Simmons, please take the floor.
Thank you very much for the warm welcome and introduction. So my particular chapter was focusing on the conflict and competition, which is progressing and heating up in the 21st century. And this is mostly based upon the larger strategic trends which are taking place. And that is, you have a US unipolar world, this Western-centric variation, which is a declining hegemon. It's in relative decline, but it still wants to keep its privileged position in the world. Hence, it's challenging this particular trend and process. And on the other side, you have this multipolar world 2.0, which is emerging. Now, this is something which is fluid. It is something which is not decided, and it's going backwards and forwards. And we see expressions of this which are occurring all over the world. And I would also add, and this was brought up in my chapter, that this is not something which is new, but it is something which is also historically rooted. Because I look at the geopolitical thinking, Western geopolitical thinking. So this goes back to this imagination, Western geopolitical imagination of Eurasia, specifically Mackinder, who at a time when the British Empire was ruling the waves, so to speak, which was a maritime power, was imagining the world divided it into regions or zones, if you like. So you had the Eurasian heartland and you had the rimland. And this was a very influential way of looking at the world, and looking at the world from a very Eurocentric, I'd even say Anglo-centric. So this is US as well as British way of looking at the world and how it's ordered. And so this definitely explained a number of earlier competitions and conflicts, if we're looking at the Great Game, for example, which played out in Eurasia. Now, this was brought up again, revisited, because this was at the beginning of the 20th century that Mackinder published this piece. But if we look in 1997, where you had Brzezinski and you had this unipolar moment where the US had come out of the Cold War as the sole superpower and saw this particular period of history as a victory of the old Cold War. Now, of course, when one's thinking goes into this particular line, it influences not only the thinking, but the actions. And I mean, this is clearly evident today when we look, for example, the imaginations of the conflict and competition going on in Ukraine, and also the narrative, if we want to put it this way, of China and Taiwan, that these are not new. And this is the role not only of physical actions, but also events which are in the cognitive, psychological area, which are influenced by information and communication. So it's not only the physical, tangible actions, but also the intangible influence on these particular things. So, I mean, if we look at Brzezinski, I mean, he noted in particular that a series of geostrategic imperatives for imperial continuation, as he put it. So this was the US as an empire and how to ensure the continuance of US empire and its hegemony. And looking at that, he had three particular geostrategic imperatives, which was based on the historical experience of empires been and gone from the past. He noted in particular that one of the imperatives was to keep vassal states dependent and also pliant to the central power, that is to the US, so that they are somewhat controlled and constrained in what they can think and do, but it is not at the level of control, for example, a client state. Now, a client state he saw as a need to keep protected and to keep pliant. So that is to protect them from external forces, to keep that particular regime in power, which of course serves and protects US interests rather than their own. And finally, the idea that to prevent the rise of powers or blocks of powers that can challenge the US. Now, this does not matter whether the bloc is so-called allied to the US or opposed to the US. The notion that anyone could challenge US hegemony is enough to incur unwanted attention from the US. So if we look at what's been happening more recently, we can see, for example, how it is viewed, the Belt Road Initiative, which, if we're looking at it from the imagination of the US, is seen as a geo-economic challenge to US supremacy, because it is seen that geoeconomics supports geopolitics. And as we have this transforming global order, it is understood that the geoeconomics of the Belt Road Initiative, for example, would support China's continued rise, and it would not be of any benefit, and it would be a potential threat to continued hegemony. And this is seen in the various commentaries by US politics and so forth, or Western in general. So looking at this, even competition can attract conflict from the US. Now, if we look at this in particular, the US has a problem. It has announced, I mean, if we're looking at Biden's 2019 statement, that he was going to take back the US's leading role in global politics, because this comes at a time when the US and the Western world, the Western world is undergoing a rather increasingly rapid economic, political, military relative decline. A lot of it done by its own hand. And it has three problems, geopolitically speaking. It has Russia, it has Iran, it has China. And these three, it's not trying to take one after the other, it's trying to take them simultaneously. And we can see how this is playing out. And increasingly, what you have are the flailings of an empire in decline and dying, which is unable to achieve its goals. It's unable to achieve them in Ukraine. It's unable to achieve them in the Indo-Pacific, although it's trying to, of course, do things like wedging those alliances, those groupings around China, such as the Belt Road Initiative. And one can see, in particular, if we look more recently, it's beyond my particular chapter, but for example, the recent events of the regime change in Bangladesh tend to support that. So the US, even though it is a dying empire, it's one that lashes out. It's relatively unpredictable, and it's looking for its own interests, which usually it demands other powers to do its interests at the expense of theirs. Hence, you're getting quite a sea change if we're looking cognitively and psychologically in Eurasia, which are more aligning with the global south, the multipolar order 2.0, because it's in their interests. And if we look at it in practical terms, you have this bloc which they have a choice to align or be coerced with the US and to become an object of international relations, or conversely, to align with the multipolar 2.0 world and continue to be a subject of it. And this is the basis of my chapter, looking at how the attempt to enforce and to keep this hegemony, which is used to be at the end of the old Cold War an absolute hegemony, now at best it's a relative hegemony but declining, and a rising multipolar 2.0 world, which is gaining strength, it's gaining momentum, and ultimately I think if there is a free choice allowed for actors, that they will align not with a messianic ideology which is self-destructive in nature, but to have this pragmatic constructive collaboration. I will end it there. Thank you.
Thank you, dear Dr. Simmons, for your comprehensive insights. Thank you very much for your chapter and teamwork. Dear colleagues, it is my pleasure to invite Dr. Selçuk Çolakoğlu to present his thoughts. Dr. Çolakoğlu is the founding director of the Turkish Center for Asia-Pacific Studies in Ankara and a faculty member at Beijing Normal University, Hong Kong Baptist University, United International College. His recent work, Turkey and China, Political, Economic, and Strategic Aspects of the Relationship, was published by a world scientific publishing house. Dr. Çolakoğlu, it was great to see you in Hong Kong. Hopefully next time in Yerevan or Ankara. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mher, for this kind introduction, but also thank you for giving this opportunity to share this chapter in your book. In that regard, of course, these topics are very dynamic. Particularly, China is a dynamic power. China is on rise, and in my chapters, particularly in the book, I focus on the Turkey-China relationship, but also I needed to define these relationships. So then the status of these two countries. In that regard, in the chapters, particularly in the book, because Mher strongly advised to use China as a young superpower or rising superpower, rather than only great power. So then here China is defined as a superpower, a young superpower, together with the United States. So then economically this is also true because there are two giant economies and there are also some other great powers. So here China is a superpower in the chapter and in the book. How about Turkey? So then we need to also define Turkey's position for that. Here, Turkey basically is defined as a strategic middle power. Of course, Turkey is not a great power, but a middle power, but influential middle power, having a particular regional influence. In that regard, I define Turkey as a strategic middle power. And also Turkey is in the top 20 economy, not like China. Of course, China is, together with the United States, they are top 2 economies, but Turkey is in the top 20, but between the 16 to 20 largest economies, but still influential, not great power capability, but having some influence and capability for that. Here in the chapter, basically, there are different layers we analyze. One is, of course, the book concept, the Eurasian playground. So then here, the Eurasian playground, there is a bipolar system there. Within the bipolar system, on the one hand, there is the West. On the other, there is the Sino-Russian tandem. In that regard, also Turkey identically is a Eurasian power. So Turkey is maybe together with Russia, Turkey there are only 2, maybe we can add some more countries, defining them Eurasian powers or Central Eurasian powers, but Turkey identically is in between Europe and Asia. But also Turkey is a swing state between the West and the Sino-Russian tandem in the Eurasian playground, particularly. In that regard, in the chapter, I try to analyze the relationship also, then the importance of the Sino-Russian, Sino-Turkish relationship in this Eurasian playground and bipolar system. The other thing, of course, the bilateral relations, I focus economic and political relations. Here, there is a rising economic partnership between Turkey and China. China has become third largest trade partner for Turkey just after the 2008 global financial crisis. This is very important because Turkey's traditional trade partners basically are in the West. Germany is the number 1 partner for almost for a century. But of course, the European Union is the largest trade partner. Particularly, the Turkish economy is a part of the European economy. Since 1996, Turkey has joined the EU's customs union. So the Turkish economy is a part of the EU economy. So except the agricultural sector, all sectors are Turkish economic sectors are well integrated into the European economy. So then economically, Turkey has interdependency, but particularly overdependence to the European economy. So then this is one fact. The other fact, of course, for Turkey, for defense policies, despite some differences and disputes, Turkey is part of the Western defense architecture as being a NATO member. So Turkey has a long-term NATO member. So for the longer term, Turkey has followed these NATO security policies. But of course, there are some ups and downs for these economic and political relations and also security relations with the West. So Turkish governments have a tendency to use some other great powers or superpowers to keep a balance or to get a leverage for their diplomatic positions. Particularly in the chapter, I focus on the past decade since 2013. Particularly, I took 2013 as a turning point because Chinese President Xi Jinping declared Belt Road Initiative. So then this is more structural or more policy ground for Chinese opening up and integration with the regional economies, particularly in Asia and in Europe and in Africa, of course. But also Turkey has developed some similar initiative in similar years, time in the 2010s, the Middle Corridor. So the Middle Corridor is also connected initiative from East Asia, particularly from China to Europe. So Turkey has a ambition to be a transit or networking or a bridge, a transit corridor between Asia and Europe. So then this is a bridge metaphor for Turkey, using its geopolitical advantage to get some economic and even strategic and political leverage and benefits from these connectivity initiatives. And in the past decade, there was a mood of cooperation for the Silk Road between Turkey and China. This is another dynamism apart from the bilateral relationship. So there is beyond further facilitation of the Sino-Turkish bilateral relations within the framework of the Silk Road cooperation. Just after the declaration, the Turkish government was very eager to involve the Belt Road Initiative, and also considering that this is an opportunity to integrate its middle corridor to the Belt Road Initiative, and also promote middle corridor within the network of the BRA. So when we talk about the Belt Road middle corridor, so this is depending on building a network through the Southern Caucasus, particularly from Georgia and Azerbaijan, and reaching to Kazakhstan and other Central Asian countries, and then reach China, and also from China, so through the same corridor, reaching to Europe. So Turkey and the Turkish government has tried to promote its middle corridor against some other alternatives, like the northern Russian corridor, for example. So this is very well-connected network from China through Russia, reaching the Eastern European countries without any interruption. And also the other alternative, of course, southern Iranian corridor through Iran, reaching Middle East countries and also Turkey, and then Europe or Eastern Mediterranean. So this is another network within the BRA initiative. In that regard, Turkey tried to use these economic opportunities from China. So then this is one main dynamic of the Sino-Turkish relationship. But on the other, Chinese side is somewhat has a policy, wait and see policy about regarding Turkey's policies or involvement with some mega projects. But despite some setbacks, we can say that after the declaration of the BRA, we can see the Turkish Sino-Turkish economic relationship has been upgraded very dramatically. So then this is one reality. The other thing also, Turkey is a civic state between the West and Sino-Russian tandem in the past decade. So Turkey also used its relationship, strong or somewhat good relationship with Russia and China from time to time as a leverage for its bargaining with NATO and the EU countries, particularly with the United States within NATO and leading EU countries like Germany, France, and Britain, basically. So the chapter tries to cover all these topics from the strategic perspective from in Eurasia, in the Eurasian landmass, and also bilateral economic relations, but also Turkish, Sino-Turkish strategic and also political relationship I try to analyze. So I want to stop here. Thank you for listening. If there are questions, so then it will be my pleasure to respond to them.
Thank you, Dr. Çolakoğlu. Thank you very much for your important speech. Thank you very much for your very interesting contribution. I now welcome Dr. Tamas Dudlak to the floor. The Dr. Dudlak is a researcher based in Budapest and associated with the Contemporary Arab World Center at Eötvös Loránd University in Hungary. Dear Tamas, it was great to see you in Yerevan during our last China-Eurasia conference. Please, the floor is yours.
Yep, thank you, Mher. Thank you for inviting me to this great occasion, and I just want to thank you for your great work for editing this book. I think it's great teamwork. And I guess we are also working on some other publications together. So in the future, our collaboration is going on. And I hope to see you in Yerevan in December this year. So yeah, with that, I just want to share my screen and show you my presentation. Okay. So my chapter is entitled "Empowering the Dragon: Strategic Competition of China and Russia in the Central Eurasian Natural Gas Sector." So basically, just to give you a short outline of my chapter, the topical focus was energy policy. Specifically, I concentrated on how changes in natural gas policy took place in Central Asia with regard to China and Russia. So the area of focus was Central Asia, Chinese and Russian involvement there, how it shaped the energy policy landscape, and especially the natural gas infrastructure in Central Asia. So the general question was that how the energy structure of Central Asia is transforming, and my basic assumption was that there is a geopolitical rivalry for energy sources. So I made a geopolitical analysis. I collected data on the distribution of resources, production, consumption, investments, loans, pipeline developments in natural gas industry, and the assessment of economic powers of the states involved. And my aim was to assess Chinese influence in Central Asia through the analysis of natural gas policy. Just for a quick outline of how the Chinese energy policy inside China looks like, we can say that the energy consumption in China is increasing, although at a decreasing rate. But the most important thing is that 60% of energy resources are imported in China. So there is huge reliance on import from Chinese perspective. And China became the largest oil importer in the world since 2015, and the largest natural gas importer since 2019. So China relies heavily on many sources of natural gas, nuclear power, as well as oil and other sources of energy. I just analyzed the Central Asian connection, and of course the most important issues here are those 4 pipelines that were built, and actually the 4th is still under construction. And these 4 pipelines, the Central Asia-China pipelines, really shaped the energy infrastructure in Central Asia and the energy situation in general in Central Asia. Because by these pipelines, these were natural gas pipelines, China tapped into Turkmenistan's huge natural gas resources and left Russia on the periphery in that regard. So there is huge dominance now of China in terms of natural gas in Central Asia because of these pipelines and because of the cooperation between Central Asian countries and China. So that's a huge kind of a transformation that is going on, and that was going on in the last 15 years. And also from Central Asian point of view, China and Chinese investment and making these pipelines were important because China provided diversification opportunity for the Central Asian countries and helped the connectivity of these countries to export their products, not just energy, but of course other trade connectivity is important from their perspective. And also China decreased the isolation of these countries by making infrastructure and connection with Central Asian countries. And China is a good source of money and technology and investment for Central Asian countries. So Central Asian countries decided to use this opportunity and make cooperation with China in natural gas policy as well as in other areas. But there is also a kind of a negative aspect of this kind of cooperation and connectivity is that, for example, Turkmenistan now is very much dependent on China because 70 or 80% of Turkmenistan's exports goes to China directly through the Central Asian China pipeline, which means a huge dependency for Turkmenistan. As for Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan, there is less reliance on the Chinese export route, but for Turkmenistan, it's a huge dependency. And just for quickly some key takeaways of my chapters, as for the natural gas production and the natural gas industry, we can say that as a kind of conclusion that China had almost entirely captured Central Asian natural gas export capacities and thus took over the position of Russia, the previously dominant position of Russia in that regard. And China is fundamentally reshaping the structure of Central Asian energy space, especially the natural gas, even if only around 8% of Chinese natural gas consumption comes from Central Asia. So you can imagine that only a small fraction for China is enough to reshape the Central Asian natural gas structure. But in general, apart from natural gas, we can see the local Central Asian context that there is this division of labor between China and Russia. So China is more focused on energy, trade, and infrastructure building, and Russia is still dominant in the area of security provision and social issues and cultural influence. And there is this kind of compartmentalized relation between China and Russia in Central Asia. So there is no intensive competition between them in China because they have different focus elsewhere. For Russia, it's Ukraine. For China, it's mainly Taiwan and other parts of the world. So in general, there is this transitional situation in Central Asia where Chinese influence is growing and Russia's influence is declining, but there is clearly Chinese dominance in terms of natural gas in Central Asia. And with that, I just want to thank you for your attention.
Yes, Tamas, thank you. Thank you very much for delivering speech on this very important issue, and thank you for your teamwork. Next, I am pleased to invite Mr. Srdjan Uljevic to deliver his presentation. He is a lecturer at the American University of Central Asia. He is mostly researching EU-Asia relations, China and India's foreign politics, and the geopolitics of Eurasia. Dear Srdjan, please, the floor is yours. We are looking forward to hear your insights.
Thank you very much, Mher. It's an honor to be here today. I would like to present briefly my chapter, and for the most part, I will focus on my argument. So, chapter's title is India's Engagement with Central Asia and Competition with China in a Multipolar World Order 2.0. I discuss India's efforts to engage Central Asia in a emerging, mostly geopolitical context. So this presentation will have three parts. Firstly, I will briefly discuss the context in which India's efforts take place. Then I will move to present my argument and why I argue for it. And lastly, one slide on conclusion. So I think that I need to discuss briefly about the context, mostly the geopolitical context in which the engagement takes place. First is the evolving Eurasian geopolitics in line with multipolar world order 2.0. Second is the war in Ukraine. And lastly is the competition between India and China. All these factors shape India's opportunities and challenges when it comes to engaging Central Asia. My argument is that although India has not yet solved its largest problem when it comes to engaging Central Asia, and that is namely the lack of a direct land access. This changing geopolitical situation, the one I just discussed briefly, in my opinion, offers new opportunities for India. Now, why do I feel that way? Well, there are five parts to that. First is that Central Asia is going something of a pivotal point due to the Russian invasion of Ukraine. And what that means is that we are observing political elites of most Central Asian states are attempting to diversify their partners, mostly economic, but in some aspect we've seen security partners as well. And I would say most importantly, the long-standing plans to improve connectivity are now finally, in my opinion, they're finally back on the table. And there's been a lot of new developments when it comes to connectivity. Yeah. The second part of the argument is that when it comes to India's key connectivity project to improve and increase its relations with Central Asia, and that is the Chabahar port, or to be more precise, the Shahid Beheshti terminal, has finally, after many years, become operational. There were a number of delays and problems, but since June 2021, it's been working. And something to update, something that is not in the chapter, but a recent development is that in May of this year, 2024, Iran and India have signed a new contract on the Chabahar port, a new 10 years contract. I think that is something to mention. Third part of the argument is that India has finally institutionalized its relations with Central Asia, and it's the last of the rising or great powers that have done that. I think this is a remarkable, important, and often underlooked aspect of India's engagement in Central Asia, and it's meaningful and consists of several working groups, including India Central Asia Summit, India Central Asia Dialogue, and joint working groups on Afghanistan and Chabahar. And as far as I can say, the joint working groups have been meeting regularly. Again, this is since the submission of this chapter. I think that institutionalization of relations will help routinize cooperation and assist with policy coordination. So this is an important, fairly recent development. The fourth reason is that if you look at India as of right now, I still think that is in a rare situation where it has good relations with Russia, and I think we know that there is a legacy there from Soviet Union, and but at the same time also with the US. So I think this is something that gives New Delhi an advantage. And the last part of the argument, and somewhat linked to the previous one, is that unlike some powers in Central Asia, India is not perceived with suspicion. It does not pose a military threat to territorial integrity, or is not seen as trying to subvert sovereignty of any of the regimes by either advancing economic dependency or democratic values. Again, this is an advantage that India still enjoys in Central Asia. To conclude, the future success of India's foreign policy goals in Central Asia will largely depend upon the ongoing structural shift towards the multipolar world order 2.0 and the future trajectory of India's relations with China, which is now markedly deteriorated and is characterized as competition. So I'm just going to keep it quick. Thank you very much for your time.
Yes, Srdjan, thank you very much. Thank you very much for introducing us situation in Central Asia and how China and India are dealing there. Dear all, finally, and it is my pleasure to invite Dr. Ahmed Bukhjamali to deliver his speech. Dr. Jamali is a postdoctoral fellow at Sun Yat-sen University in China with publications in journals such as Pacific Focus, Korean Journal of Defense Analysis, East Asia, and others. Dr. Jamali, thank you very much that you joined us. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Mher Sahakyan. Thank you so much for inviting me and organizing this wonderful book launch. I'm really delighted to be part of it, and congratulations to every single one who contributed their chapters in this remarkable book. Am I audible, right?
Yes, we cannot see your video, but we can hear you.
I'm trying to open the video, but due to the internet connectivity, I think I'm having some trouble. So without further ado, I would like to seek your attention on this important topic. My book chapters, including with Mahmoud Hussain and Professor Hong Sung Liu, talks about US-China competition and framing new security architecture in the Asia-Pacific region. Overall, this book chapter is trying to lay out the great power competition and their impact on two South Asian countries, namely India and Pakistan. So overall, the key contribution is all about, if you look at the map, we can see the Indo-Pacific region is very important. It's very important because it's 75% of the global shipping trade and 50% of the oil passages from this significant littoral Indian Ocean, and which is key to today's great power competition, in which we saw the emergence of number of strategies by great powers, because 41% of the world maritime trade and 80% of the world oil trade and 100% of the submarine fiber optic cable are run through this remarkable gigantic body of ocean. So overall, this Indian Ocean is key to great power competition, specifically when it comes to dealing with multipolar order 2.0. So overall, the outline of this chapter is all about US free and open Indo-Pacific strategy and India's role in Quad mechanism, China's BRI. And the second subsequent section talks about the new security architecture, in which I will be briefly giving you the idea about Indo-US cooperation in terms of defense and security sector, and China-Pakistan security and strategic nexus. So overall, basically, this paper is talking about great power competition and its implications on the Asia-Pacific countries. So in the introduction section, we saw the emergence of cooperation and confrontational approach from United States of America towards China. Is subsequently, in the years of Obama, there was a co-engagement, but there was a paradigm shift when Trump came to office, and we saw the national security strategy of 2017, national defense strategy, of 2018, where China and Russia were labeled as revisionist and strategic competitors. And in the subsequent years, we also saw the trade competition that lasted and is still going on under the Biden administration. So the competition was all-time high, specifically since 2017. When it comes to dealing with maritime competition, different scholars have their own research in this significant topic, where they have used different theories to understand and how the security architecture is going on. But in our understanding, there is a lack of predominantly, especially in South Asia, we saw both great powers are marching toward maritime threshold, but there is no significant pushback. So how are the implications? So the research question is, how are the implications of US-China competition being played out and witnessed, and what are its key components and proponents in the Asia-Pacific? Our argument is that there is a bilateral relations faces the dilemma of a strategic consensus between two great powers, and both these great powers, rather than managing great power competition in South Asia, they are increasing the strategic peculiarities in US-China maritime security struggle in Asia-Pacific at large and South Asia in particular. So after introduction, we briefly give how briefly outline the US free and open Indo-Pacific that dates back to the Hillary Clinton speech and former President Barack Obama's pivot to Asia strategy. And later we saw in Vietnam during the APEC meeting summit, President Trump outlined this strategy. And in the subsequent years, this strategy come across in the official discourse of American foreign policy from time to time. The key important fact is, if you look at the role of India in this US foreign policy, it has increased significantly, specifically with several titular languages being spoken in favor of India, such as major defense partner, net security provider. In other words, there is a sense of perception in American strategic culture about the maximization of the role of India in this region. And we have seen India itself providing its own role to be a net security provider despite compromising on strategic autonomy, which is the key pillar of Indian foreign policy since 1947. So we have also seen the emergence of quadrilateral security dialogue, in which India, Australia, Japan, and United States are key members. And so overall, the role of India has maximized, specifically since 2005. In responding, we saw the emergence of China's BRI, and how this global multilateral and financial infrastructure investment is being taken care of in throughout the world, in which there are more than 100 signatory members and touching nook and corner of the global offshore. So Chinese BRI has its own advantages in the South Asia, in which Pakistan has a very big role to play. And China-Pakistan economic corridor with roughly investment of $64 billion in USA, and the second phase is going on. So South Asian region has become a next pivotal region for Chinese investment. But within the BRI, we also saw the naval defense framework and the modernization of the PLAN, People's Liberation Army and Navy, which is the backbone of BRI in terms of supply chains, crude oil supplies, and China is making very significant efforts to develop a ring of naval presence in the Pacific and Indian Ocean. So overall, China has done a lot and is continuously investing in foreign investment in terms of its naval modernizations through the defense white paper, which was published in 2015, which was considered as a benchmark of Chinese naval strategy and giving maritime Silk Road a new understanding. So overall, this type of strategy is implemented, and we have also seen the modernizations, because these choke points, as I mentioned earlier, are key to Chinese economy, and he rely huge on Chinese export and import in terms of revitalizing Chinese economy. When it comes to the dealing with the second part, after discussing US strategy and Chinese response, the idea is how these two great powers are deepening their strategic influence in maritime and security spheres. So within this region, India's role has maximized, specifically with the Indo-US civil nuclear deal that was inaugurated back in the Manmohan Singh era. But with the passage of time, Modi's government demonstrated a new height, and Modi and Trump personal chemistry and the charisma in their foreign policy discourse has further revitalized Indian foreign policy structures, and the relationship between the two countries has strengthened remarkably. And we have seen a number of series of initiatives, such as logistical exchange memorandum agreement in 2016 and communications compatibility and security agreement in 2018. These were the key foreign policy initiatives between the two countries to maximize the role of India to address China challenge. And 2+2 is another initiative in which both countries, both foreign and defense ministers, have to meet regularly and are going to further curtail the Chinese influence in this Southeast Asian region. So within the maritime discourse, we also saw the exercises in terms of strategic cooperation and communication. And in other words, the growing scholarship between these two great countries are being termed as quasi-alliance, despite resistance from the Indian foreign policy discourse that there is no alliances between two countries, and India cannot give up the strategic autonomy. So now, when it comes to dealing with China and Pakistan enjoys a very good relations for roughly 7 decades. Yesterday, we had the National Day, 14th August. In Pakistan came into being on 14th August 1947. So the idea is Pakistan has enjoyed good relations over a period of time, and this relation has given a remarkable success from geostrategic to geoeconomic. And Pakistan has recently inaugurated its foreign policy discourse. So the military cooperation between two countries has strengthened over time, and 2.8% of the Chinese largest supplier has been Pakistan, in which number of equipments in terms of military defense and heavy industrial complex has been inaugurated from time to time, in which China has played a remarkable role. So, of course, naval cooperation in China-Pakistan economic corridor, the port of Gwadar is a linchpin in which Chinese investment, and recently, next week, hopefully, there will be the inauguration of Gwadar International Airport, which is a new significant in improvement connectivity between the two countries. So the idea is both these countries have faced the global challenges together and has never been apart. If you look at here in this map, we can see the port of Gwadar and the subsequent small islands that are being located. So the idea is both South Asian countries, specifically India and Pakistan, are military powers, and these two great powers have a long strategic influence in this region from time to time. So how to avoid this dilemma of strategic consensus? We have focused that there is a dire need for strategic communication between both great powers to bring those India and Pakistan on negotiation table, so that these countries can minimize the threshold on the border security and number of clashes that are going on. and both these two great powers can play their significant role to minimize the regular to maintain the regular strategic communication, while Indo-PACOM and PLAN has a big role to play. So thank you so much, and congratulations once again to Professor Sahakyan for this wonderful book launch.
Dear Dr. Jamali, thank you very much for your very interesting presentation. I want to give a floor to Dr. Matthew Grant-Pieren to introduce his very important research. He is the head of the Political Science Department at the Catholic University of Vende, a postdoctoral fellow at ICES, and the co-convener of PICA's International Relations and Social Sciences Working Group. His recent book, Nostalgic Virility as a Cause of War, was published by McGill Queen's University. Dr. Grant-Pieren is very active player of our China-Eurasia community. He is always attending in our conferences, and also he contributed very important chapter for this book. Dear Dr. Grant-Pieren, please, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you, Mher, for the invitation and for this book launch event, as well as for the conferences you organize. Just to briefly talk about the chapter and why you should read it. The idea with my colleague, Eric Pomes, who is also working at the same university as I do, was to offer a chapter on Chinese perspective of international order and international law that was different than those that are published by mainstream thinkers who tend to have a list of severe limitations. The first one we can find is they are biased in the concept they use. They apply Western political thoughts, so concepts that are grounded in the historical context of Western world, to a country that is absolutely not part of it. So question, can these concepts grasp Chinese understanding of international order and of international law? Second problem, they rarely go back to the text. So they barely use Chinese official sources, and often, to make their argument, quote each other's publications as a sort of database. This is kind of methodological issue. And finally, when they talk about China, it is always in a negative sense. We can take, for example, recent publication by Rosemary Foot, who concentrates on why the rise of China means the rise of dictatorships in the world. So we try to avoid this limitation by systematically collecting Chinese official documents, whether legal position, official press reports, Xi Jinping press conferences, discourses, from 2013 up to 2023, and we analyze them rigorously and systematically using AI technology through a method that is called mixed method approach to this critical discourse analysis, which enables us, one, to track and analyze all the explicit narrative structures, but also the implicit structures, as to better understand how Chinese elites' thought are constructed and how they build their international communication about it. And the second big advantage of that method is that we can test as many theories as we want. So basically, we constructed a database of theories we wanted to test to understand how Chinese discourses were constructed, that range from realism, liberalism, constructivism, up to post-Marxism and feminism theories. And then we applied these codes, that filters, to the text and retrieved what were found So if you read our chapter, what we expose are only the data that we retrieved. If there is an argument that is not mentioned, it is not because we don't like it or because we don't want to talk about it. It's simply that it didn't appear in the data. So probably up to date, we try to offer something that goes as close to the truth as possible. And I think that kind of approach suited well the overall direction that Mher tried to give to this book, something original, thought-provoking, and that differ from other books. So basically what you read in this edited book, you won't find it elsewhere. In terms of concrete elements we found about the Chinese perception, we analyze it through a question that is still not resolved, and to our eyes kind of concentrate or illustrate well the sort of so-called US-China rivalry. We choose to select the South China Sea dispute issue and to see what kind of ideas the Chinese elites were putting when mentioning that. First of all, we found that there is an important emotional narrative recalling implicitly the humiliation China suffered during the Opium Wars and the following events, and that they see the South China Sea issue as a way to stop once for all the century of humiliation and to put an end to what they perceive as aggressive US geopolitics. There is a second narrative that is really important, that is the importance of history, rooting the actions they are doing now in South China Sea as the continuation of ancient practices during 14th, 15th, 16th century, as to gain legitimacy and to show their action is just natural for production of history and just continues. They articulate these two elements, emotions and history, to create a third narrative that because of the specificity of Asian philosophy, Asian history, then Asia should be managed only by Asian countries, implying China. So they suggest that the world order, or that's the end of unilateralism as practiced by the West, and that tend to suggest a sort of regionalism world order in which each continent would have a sort of big power, superpower that would manage it and interpret laws and international rules based on the specificity of the regions. It's an argument we found quite interesting, and we try to develop it in the forthcoming book, also edited by Mher, on the BRI. So that's something we are going to develop to exploit further, as to better understand connections between Chinese projects, Chinese ideas, the way they justify it, communicate it, and how that articulates with various concepts, such as World Order 2.0. Not going to monopolize much the floor, so thank you very much for your attention, and Mher, thanks again for the invitation.
Dear Matthew, thank you very much. Thank you very much for your teamwork, for your great contribution. You are very helpful, always finding new contacts, introducing new colleagues, and we really appreciate your work. And we are opening our question and answer session. Do we have any question in our audience? If yes, please introduce yourself and give your question to one of our speakers. If no, I have some questions. At first, I want to give a question to Dr. Greg Simmons. Dear Greg, For a long time, you are following what is happening in Russia and in post-Soviet countries. What do you think about Ukrainian tactics now they are invading Russian soil, and do they have any capabilities to stay there? And what is their main aim? What they are trying to solve with this kind of actions? Thank you.
Okay, yeah, it has no military value at all, what they're doing going into Kursk. There is nothing really there for them to take, which is why they had some early success because it wasn't heavily guarded. This, I think, is a product of the fact that they were leaving the news cycle. They were becoming much less important in world news, and they rely on having a high profile in order to have continued support. So, I mean, this is a competitive thing. And if we look now, I mean, Israel is the strategic issue for the US. Ukraine has never been strategic, it's been an opportunistic one. And Ukraine is not only about what's happening in Ukraine, but more widely what's happening in the European region in terms of the system of vassal and client states and those competing states. Now, of course, they have no means to keep those troops supplied, reinforced, rearmed, etc. They will be systematically wiped out. The greater significance of it is that they have just thrown in some of their best trained and equipped reserves when they're getting pushed back on a wider front on Ukrainian territory. So the implication for this, of course, is that they will start falling back quicker across Ukrainian territory proper. And so, I mean, you even have pro-Ukrainian channels which are criticizing this as a reckless political gesture, a symbolic gesture. So, yeah, nothing good will come out of it for Ukraine, for sure. And what it has seemed to have done is united Russian public even more. I mean, people are rallying behind, not against the Russian government. You have recruitment, which is going up. So everything is counterproductive. And now the Sumy region is on the radar of the Russian military.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions? If no, I have question for Professor Çolakoğlu. Dear Professor Çolakoğlu, you have mentioned about the fact that China and Turkey agreed on that China's Belt and Road, that they must conjunct harmonize China's Belt and Road Initiative and Turkish Middle Corridor. So several years passed. So do we have any kind of results after this decision?
Here, there's an uncertainty because Turkey's expectation from China to build more efficient middle corridor from China, link from China to Europe through the middle corridor. But when we analyze the Chinese involvement, particularly in Turkey, they invested in Turkey's infrastructure and energy infrastructure and transportation infrastructure, and particularly energy infrastructure. They are basically called BRI investments. So then it is not clear. Which part is the bilateral economic investments or which part is the BRI investments. So that is the general description. So all Chinese investments are described BRI investments, not only in Turkey, all regional countries. So this is unclear. There is no clear data for that. But so far, China has a wait-and-see policy because before the eruption of the war between Russia and Ukraine, then the Russian corridor, northern corridor, was much more efficient way to transfer goods overland through the overland from China to Europe was much more efficient, because if you reach the Russian rail network, you can easily reach the Eastern European countries. It was more efficient, more capable, also more fast transfer of the cargoes from China to Europe or vice versa. But after the eruption of the war, so then the northern corridor has been almost seized because of the political situation between Russia and Western countries. And the middle corridor has become more viable. The other thing, of course, China has been considering the developed Iranian southern corridor to reach the Middle East, and also for delivering the goods for that. Here, I think the strategic outlook is different from the point of Ankara and Beijing. For Ankara wants to be a hub on East-West corridor. For Beijing, so Turkey is part of the West Asian or Middle East system. So which this is not desired thing for Turkey. For Turkey wants to be a corridor between East and West. That means from Europe to China. But from the Chinese logistic or strategic definition, Turkey is part of the Middle East or West Asia, and for building a connectivity for that through Iran. In that regard, China has a wait-and-see policy, but also BRI have different corridors and roads alternatives for that. China never rejected Turkey's proposal and approach, but for a very long time, China just preferred to invest only in Turkey. Turkey's transportation infrastructure and also particularly energy infrastructure. So we cannot say that the BRI cooperation has reached the Turkey's desired level. But on the other, of course, Turkey is providing good potential, particularly for Chinese investments in the region, because having access to many regional countries, to Black Sea countries, Eastern Mediterranean countries, and also, of course, some Eastern European countries, and of course, Middle East and North Africa in that regard has logistical importance of Turkey is attracting China. So this is a process, not a done deal, but there are different perspectives and different evaluations of the strategic locations. So then we cannot say that Ankara's and Beijing's strategic outlook is same. They are not totally on the same page. They have, of course, naturally regional differences and strategic perspectives for that. The other challenge, of course, Turkey is just demanding Chinese flow and investments without offering financial participation for the projects, with big mega projects for that. This is also delay for China, because almost every country in Asia and in Africa expecting only Chinese investments. So this is also a challenge for BRI, because China has, despite its economic size and capability, China has some critical decisions to make, investing in domestic market, the Chinese market, and also picking up some regional countries for investment. So there should be a priority list to invest for that. So this is another delay, because there is no unlimited fund for BRI. So then China should make a priority list to invest for that. But we can say that for the past decade, Sino-Turkish economic partnership has elevated to upper level, so that there is more upward trend and also dramatically increase for Chinese financial flow and investments in Turkey. And some Chinese banks have banking right in Turkey. So this is a process. Then we need to follow these developments.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I have a question for Dr. Łągiewska. Dear Magdalena, in the multipolar world order 2.0, technologies and cyberspace is playing very important role. And now we can see that there is some kind of decoupling between Western powers and China in technological sphere. So you are located in Poland, and what is the position of Poland and our Visegrad countries on what is happening between China and US, and what is their position on digital Silk Road? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Actually, Poland is an ally to the US, so we are much closer when it comes to relations with the Americans recently, also due to the war with Ukraine, you know, so it's also one of the reasons. But Poland is not a country which could be summarized like a technological power in any case. I mean, we are very traditional. So even if we think about some kind of smart courts, I don't think it could be easily applied in case of my country. So very often when we can do everything with paper documents, we prefer this kind of things instead of, you know, digital copies and so on. So even with small things concerning everyday life, we are not too much advanced with this regard. And of course, we are looking forward to different types of, you know, achievements made by China or the US, but it's rather to see how it looks like, but not really to be fully implemented. We are simply not ready to make it. So I think that it's only a question of time, and maybe within 10, 15 years, we will make some efforts to make it possible, but not really in a very, very short future, like 5 years or something like that. It doesn't look like this for now, unfortunately, I would say. Thank you.
Thank you for your answer. And my next question is for Dr. Tamas Dudlak. Dear Tamas, in your chapter, you are nicely summarizing and introducing the role of Russia, also the role of China in Central Asian energy market. And what do you think, or what do you know due to your research? What kind of impact Russo-Ukrainian war is having or will have in the future in the market of energy resources of Central Asia?
Yeah, thank you, Mher, for the question. Well, this is a very relevant and topical question. I partly addressed this issue because, as far as I remember, I finalized my chapter around 1 year ago, or maybe a little bit later. So I could add some aspects of the effects of the war in Ukraine. But what I found and what is still relevant nowadays is that in terms of oil, there is not much difference between the pre-war era and the post-war era, because Kazakhstan is still, you know, the main oil exporter country in Central Asia, and they have connection to the Russian oil infrastructure, and also to the Western oil infrastructure, in a sense that they are transferring oil through the Caspian Sea. And figures, I mean, the latest figures that I encountered with didn't show much change in that regard. As for natural gas, there is also not much change, in a sense that China is dominant and Russia is not a relevant player in terms of exports from Turkmenistan. Other players such as Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan, they are very small producers of natural gas. I mean, Uzbekistan has a huge consumption, basically. So for export, there is not much left for Uzbekistan. And for Kazakhstan, Kazakhstan is mainly an oil producer country. not much natural gas producer. So the existing natural gas connections are relevant in terms of Turkmenistan and China, and those things are going on. It's increasing. I mean, the capacity of the pipeline that are now connecting Turkmenistan and China. These are 3 sections of the Central Asia-China pipeline. The capacities allow for some increase, and also there is the huge question of the 4th pipeline, the 4th section of these pipeline networks that is under construction. There are still problems with that. There are pricing problems mainly, as far as I could check. A couple of months ago, there were some news concerning price debates. So overall, what we can see is Chinese dominance in the natural gas industry, still Russian influence in the oil transports, especially from Kazakhstan, but also Western involvement in terms of oil through the Caspian Sea.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Do we have any question to our speakers? If yes, please introduce yourself and give your question. When you are thinking, I will give my question to Dr. Matthew Grant-Pierron. Dear Matthew, you have introduced us what is happening in Far East, but you are located also in France. You also understand what is happening between European Union, China. You have great understanding of what is happening between China and France. So recently, President Xi Jinping visited France. He met with President Macron. Before that, President Macron was in China for his visit. He mentioned that France will not take a part in this kind of contradictions between the US and China. But what do you think? What are the main results of President Macron's visit to China and President Xi's visit to France?
Yeah, thank you for the question. That's actually, it's a big question mark, because as you mentioned, we are caught in a sort of contradiction. Traditionally, France is never aligned to any other bloc, as de Gaulle presidency showed during the Cold War, by visiting Moscow, by being the first country recognizing China as the true China. So that builds on this history that France, also by being closely tied to the US and European powers, can play a sort of autonomous and independent role on the international scene, being a bridge, basically. It's also, but it's quite unclear for Macron's presidency, as he is known for being able to tell and give opinions based on what the other one's expectations are. On one side, there is the argument that France should get closer to China for economic ties and finding other resources to fuel our collapsing economy. But on the other one, there is more importance given to the idea of liberal idea of a European continent that is unified politically under the EU, and thus supports quite openly the Western support to Ukraine. So this is a sort of contradiction. You, on one side, trying to put France in the sort of new world, as he also tried indirectly, implicitly, to make France join the BRICS, but failed. And on the other side, embracing more and more NATO and EU. And when he went to China, he didn't go alone. He also went with EU officials. So there is, I think, for him, a political agenda that he follows, trying to make the EU more, or being better considered in China, to secure for himself, after his mandate, an important role within the EU. So there might be this double implication, French official agenda and Emmanuel Macron's personal agenda. For China, I believe from the French sources that the goal, or first, is to pay tribute to the coming anniversary of the official recognition by France of the People's Republic of China. That's going to happen in October. So it's one way to pay that important date. And probably for China to see up to what extent France is really committed to the so-called Western Bloc, or if it can still play a role like under de Gaulle, a sort of free player. That's what I would answer to your question.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Do we have any other questions to Dr. Grant-Pierron or other speakers? If no, I have my question to Dr. Jamali. Dr. Jamali, you have mentioned about several security issues. And what do you think? We know that Pakistan stood Shanghai Cooperation Organization member, and India is also there, China is also there. What do you think? Can this be used for Pakistan and India as a platform for solving their problems and contradictions?
Sahakyan, thank you. Thank you so much for the wonderful question. Since 2017, both India and Pakistan joined the SCO. And I think for both these countries, it is really a good platform, despite the fact that it is led by both these great powers such as China and Russia. I think both these two great powers can have the leverage on India and Pakistan to come to the negotiation table, despite the fact that in the past, we have seen the Kargil crisis of 1999, in which US played a remarkable role in conflict prevention rather than escalation. So far, the membership of SCO has the potential to provide a modus vivendi for both these two South Asian countries. And I think since the Ukraine war, the chances to resolve any such issue has minimized due to the fact that both are highly, both these two great powers are seeking attention to resolve the Ukraine issue. But when it comes to dealing with South Asia, this is really going to be a next hub of great power competition. So I think, yes, SCO has the maximum leverage and binding force upon India and Pakistan to come to the negotiation tables and resolve this issue, specifically the Kashmir issue. But the point is, when India has most of the time advocated that this issue has a bilateral sense and no third party has the right to intervene. But on Pakistan side, we have our Ministry of Foreign Affairs has oftentimes, and the subsequent governments have most of the time advocated to configure this issue based on international law, UN resolutions, and according to the agreements done before. So the idea is SCO could have the potential to leverage this issue and minimize the border conflict, but it is quite uncertain until and unless there is a major involvement from both Russia and China and have some task force to be assigned under the spectrum of SCO, then definitely I think this has good repercussions for South Asia.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Do we have any question in the audience? Or do we have any comments or last opinions from our speakers? If you want to add something, please, the floor is yours. If no any questions and comments, I think that we have worked for more than 1 hour. Thank you very much. Thank you for your speeches. Congratulations once again to all of us. Thank you very much for your teamwork and dedications. I hope we will get our books very soon and we will celebrate this occasion as well. Thank you very much. And thanks go to all of our guests. Thank you very much that you have joined us from different places of the world, making this conference international. Thank you. Thank you and goodbye.
Goodbye.
Hope to see you soon in Crossroads of Eurasia.